Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.
Tonight, Bank of America sees Brent crude hitting $120 a barrel by June of next year. October's job numbers came out, and it was a blowout for last month. And Costco is now limiting how much toilet paper and water you can buy. All that and more tonight on Wall Street Wrap-Up. Hi, welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up, and I hope your week went well. I'm Andre Laborde. Our goal is bringing Wall Street to your street for today, for Friday, November the 5th, 2021, and to get you ready for the week ahead. For Thanksgiving, many from around the country will be heading to the airports to fly during the busiest time of the year. So we can be with our loved ones on that Thursday. Well, about 8 weeks ago, we had as our guest Oscar MUNOZ. Oscar is the former CEO and chairman of the board of United Airlines. Well, now that we're into November and Thanksgiving is less than 3 weeks from now, we thought it would be worthwhile bringing Oscar back from August to hear how the airlines will balance employee shortages and flight cancellations, along with the mass exodus of Americans going to the airports during the busiest time of the year. But before that, so how did the markets do this week? Well, all the major averages, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all had record closes for the week. It was a very good week in the market. And all the major averages, the Dow Jones, is raised. Oh, and also with that, Wells Fargo is raising NVIDIA and putting it as a strong buy with a new price target at $320 a share. By the way, NVIDIA stock is up over 1,000% over the past 5 years. What a run. Well, as I say, we brought you Oscar MUNOZ, former CEO and chairman of United Airlines, about 8 weeks ago. And now with Thanksgiving coming up and fast, we thought we'd find out what he said about airline travel for Thanksgiving and this coming fourth quarter. Hi, Oscar. Welcome to Wall Street Wrap-Up.
Well, thanks for having me, Andre. I appreciate it.
When did you retire as CEO of United?
So I stepped down from the company with any formal procedures. I was executive chair as well in May of 2021, so just a few months ago.
It really has. And Scott Kirby was the one who took over right after?
Right.
I see.
Scott is someone I procured early on the process and built. People don't give it as much. The concept of good succession planning in a large public company is not something it's something that's not often done well. Mm-hmm. And I think the way we did it at United, signs of great companies are when you can make a nice, easy succession plan with the right person that carries on the existing legacy and builds it on from themselves. And I think we did a nice job of doing that at United.
Yeah, I think that's the best way when it comes to everybody from employees to contractors to suppliers. When there's a seamless transition, that's usually always the most easiest way without any kind of uncomfortable bumps along the way.
No, and again, and just like United, I think we had 10 CEOs in the course of 12 or 13 years. So back to your point of employers and customers, right? What an experience of constantly having to sort of whiplash back and forth. So it's nice to have a little continuity and a little focus on the future.
Oscar, what do you see the economy looking like for the remainder of this year and going into next of 2022?
So I am an optimist by nature and always thinking of the positive side of things because that's what we're supposed to generally do. And 3 weeks ago, we were looking really, really strongly at the future. Things were beginning to come back. Meetings, board meetings that I attend, we're all going to be in person, but clearly this Delta variant has had its effect. The concept and the divide around vaccination has caused a little uncertainty. But having said all that and knowing that uncertainty exists, at least at United Airlines, we're certainly bullish about the back half of the year and going forward. We think things will recover back to normal, not quickly and certainly well into next year, but we're pretty positive about that. The overall, so I talk to a lot of customers. I've been doing quite a bit of traveling. And so clearly the pent up demand to get out of my town, my city, my home. And so our leisure flights have been jam-packed full, and our leisure destinations are always full. We've opened up a little bit of Europe. That's something that I've been working on for some time. And all those flights are full. And of course, the Delta variant's having its effect on that and such. But most of the folks are feeling very, very comfortable and safe in flying, A. B, they have a little bit of money to spend, which is great for the consumer space. And clearly, I believe that, little bumps aside, we will be back, next year as an economy. I think we'll begin to be hitting on all cylinders.
In the Wall Street Journal, the CEO of Marriott reported that they had great gains for this last quarter that they had, and they see the business. In fact, they see the business economy, business traveling to be picking up for the third and the fourth quarter. And I guess I understand what you're saying when it comes to news reports. I mean, for leisure travel, the airlines are packed. Do you see business travel usually always lagging consumer personal travel?
Well, I think historically, not so much. I think the events of the day certainly are going to change the paradigm. And so by far, business travel is easily the slowest. Now, the way United is situated on all our central hubs, they all operate in the top 5 business communities in the country. And that business travel has certainly been lagging what we've seen on the leisure side. It will return, and it's not normally lagging, but it is in this particular instance. We're starting to see more of it. You're hearing CEOs talk publicly and openly about return to office and sort of getting back to normal. It's just business is such a relationship and a human sort of connectivity. If you talk to people in the sales organizations, they can't wait to get back out there with their customers. And what I say to folks publicly, when they say, no, it'll never be back, it's kind of like teleconferencing of a few years ago where nobody was ever going to go on trips. I just don't believe that's true. The human dynamic in the business aspects of how we do business are going to require sort of face-to-face over time. And honestly, what I tell CEOs who are reluctant to believe that, or at least understand that, is, your competitors, if you're the top player in your market space, your competitors are loving the fact that you're saying you're never going back to the office and you're never going to be back in public. And there's an old United commercial that's kind of resurfaced that sort of did that, kind of the boss walking around with tickets to everyone. It's like, we're going to get back out there and meet with our customers. That's a fundamental nature of the capitalist markets and business. And I strongly, my opinion is that they're going to return. And I talk to a lot of folks in leadership that feel the same way.
You might have to ask Scott to dust off that old commercial, because sometimes the retroactive commercials are sometimes the best, and especially with business travel. Yeah,
that's been discussed, and of course, given the financial nature of of what the company has gone through, unless we air it on social media or you let me play it on events like this, it's hard to get it on network TV right now at the cost of things going on out there.
Well, Oscar, you got an open invite here. I just want you to know that, especially those in the financial industry. Teleconferencing only goes so far. Now, I'm very happy. There's no way someone such as yourself can be coming into our area, into the studio and talking. So this works out perfect. But when it comes to account execs and sales and pressing the flesh, very happy for companies like DocuSign that you can sign away, or Zoom, or Teams with Microsoft. But there comes to be a point where you want to have a face-to-face type of relationship, and business really needs that type. Especially, what I'm thinking too, also, especially for new people that are just in a new salespeople, new account execs. If you've been in it for a while, that's one thing, and you haven't developed those relationships. But you have to have that personal one-on-one to be able to make that sale.
I think all of the above, Andre. I couldn't agree more. And then fundamentally, especially when you run a large corporation such as United, the culture of your workforce is an incredibly important aspect of that. And it's hard to nurture and develop that, especially with your corporate headquarters folks, when there's no one around. And so we're seeing the mental health stress that's created, the feeling of sort of isolationist. But at the end of the day, if you're part of a work group and part of that work group's in the office and you're not, it's not going to take long for you to feel sort of ostracized and separate. Not because anyone means to make you feel that way. It's just the nature of the beast. And I don't know if you've participated in any what we are now calling officially hybrid meetings, where the people that can be there physically, great, and then we'll dial everybody else in at the same time. And I've done it on both ends, and it's just when you're not in the room, there's just so much conversation, communication, and just, body language conversation that really makes it a sense.
Just recently, although this was before the Delta variant really started getting going, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, James Gorman, had said that he wanted all of his employees, now this was in Manhattan for the New York area, back in by Labor Day. Well, I'm sure that's going to have to change some, or possibly. I don't know. I haven't heard what he said since this in the last week or so, week and a half. But other companies, you're right, CEOs are going to have to adapt to having, like you say, hybrid or other type, while at the same time having FaceTime, physical FaceTime in the offices or at the workplace for doing their work.
Yeah, I think what I see the most widely sort of approved practice has been slow. I always say to everyone that asks me, it's like, provide your company and your employees and your folks options. And then once you have options, I think people are more comfortable. People that can't for whatever reason, well, the option is for them to stay out a little bit longer. People that want to opt in and come in, let them in, and then do it, a couple days a week on, a week. There's all sorts of models that people are being done. And so that's how it'll help. It'll be a slow, gradual migration back to the office. And Gorman certainly said that. All the big bank heads, Jamie Dimon was very, very specific, because at JP Morgan Chase, you're coming back to work or you don't longer work here. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but that's kind of what he said.
Whether you're a family of two or you're running a company such as the size of an airline, you're seeing inflation right now. And I've talked to a number of economists and CEOs, and I've gotten two things. Many are saying that it's transitory, temporary, and some are saying that it's here to stay. What are your thoughts, your personal thoughts, about this?
I've gotten out of the economic forecasting business.
You're not. You put your economics hat on.
I watch demand of our customers. That's from my opinion, I can't imagine it's transitory. I think there's always cycles, and I think a certain degree of inflation is going to creep into the market. It just from a standpoint of that, it's the correction, everything that's happened. It's creating these different paradigms and dynamics that people don't understand. And one of the pressures that will happen will be on inflation. I don't think it's as severe as some people think, that it's going to really crater markets. But the concept of transitory is a little concerning for me, because people begin to make decisions that maybe aren't, from a long-term perspective, the right ones. Nobody expected this kind of impact to ever be felt in our economy. All right, in our industry, the worst thing we ever had from an external event was 9/11. And it was by far then the worst thing that ever happened to the industry. But I think the economy I just believe it's going to have to take a little bit of an impact.
I was watching Ken Langone this week, in fact, and Ken, who is the co-founder of Home Depot, he was saying, and where he also agrees also with you, is that it's labor cost. As you know, when you're running a company, so much percentage of your expenses weekly and monthly is labor costs. And once you give that employee X amount of dollars per hour or per day or whatever their contract states, you can't then go back and take it back. So that's why he also agrees concurrently with you, is that this isn't temporary, but, we'll be seeing. Of how something like that.
We'll see. But in the interim, I think the focus that I see a lot of folks taking is putting forth some excitement first to their employees. Let's let people know in our business we're buying these aircraft, we're investing in the customer experience. We're not investing as much as we normally would, given that financial constraints and the debt that we've had to take on. But I think for business leaders across the system, as much enthusiasm, appreciation, and more importantly, kind of enthusiasm and positivity about what the future might hold, I think is going to, the old adage, we talk ourselves into bad things, is so true. And if we all walk around, oh my God, this will never work, this will never happen, it's not true. And all you have to do is go back in history. We have a very strong economy. We have an incredible base of leaders in our capital markets. They're going to make this work.
If you're just joining us, so happy to have Oscar MUNOZ. Oscar is the retired CEO and chairman of the board of United Airlines. We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back. And we're back. If you're just joining us, we're talking with Oscar MUNOZ. Oscar is just retired in May, since last May, as the CEO and chairman of the board of United Airlines. Oscar, right before we left for a break, you were talking about the large order of aircraft that United had ordered. You can't sometimes turn on a dime, like if you're behind the wheel of a sailboat as compared to the wheel of an aircraft carrier. With something, if you make a large order of purchases, such as aircraft, all right, and then all of a sudden a pandemic like this occurs, what type of timeline are you having to look for? 12 months, 18 months?
The first ones in get the first slots for the aircraft in this particular case. The lag for aircraft is going to be pretty long, right? I mean, all our manufacturers, all the parts manufacturers, that whole supply chain aspect has been also sort of flattened and slowed down. So it'll take some time to ramp those things up. We have great partners in the space. Everyone that we work with across the board with regards to aircraft, we've been planning on this for some time. The announcement we made was the right one at the right time for us, and it guarantees us slots and production schedules. So we think we're ahead of the game. Now, of course, the downside to that is you may be ahead of the game of something you don't necessarily want to do, right? Once you order them, they are yours. I mean, the adage in our world is once they've cut metal, that plane is yours, and you've got to take it at some point in time. So it is a bit risky, but again, that's how fundamentally bullish we are on the return to work, return to offices, return to normal business travel. It will be slow, but we're building for the next 3 to 5 or 10 years.
And we were talking about employees. Your kind of work is very specialized. You had reductions of flights because of laying on the ground. How do pilots keep up their skills?
Well, it's a great question, Andre, and I think one the public doesn't generally understand and know. You cannot take off time from flying for any period of time and then just jump back into the aircraft. There's a level of reentry requirements and retraining that has to be performed and done. And I'm happy to say, we built the largest training center in the world for pilots at United out in our Denver facility. And we've been promoting people from first officer to captain all of this time. So it does require significant hours of scheduled training before you can get back on the aircraft. And we've been performing all of those things. I have to shout out to our labor union that oversees the pilots. Right at the start of this, anticipating that we would get into this issue, it's like, how do we structure a temporary deal with how they get compensated, how many hours they get, all the different structures in the old contract? How do we adapt that contract to fit the model that says exactly what your question is? We're going to have to keep you trained. We're going to have to keep you in there to some degree. We can't keep everybody, so we can furlough a bunch of folks and then live to fight another day. But why don't we keep everybody generally employed? Take the time to do all the training so that when demand comes up, and it's been coming up very quickly, right? You've seen other airlines
just as fast as it slowed down. Now it's ramping right back up. You're right.
And so the trick is to be ready for that. And this is not, to your question, this is not an overnight thing. I mean, it can take 3 to 6 months to get people back up to speed. We got our flight attendants who have to be the same way. You have to be, from a safety perspective, flying ready.
Oscar, with this shutdown occurred so fast, what does this teach us employers for keeping cash on hand?
I suspect boards will take a much a stronger stance on what the sort of the requirements for cash are. I know in our business, given the history of airlines, right, many people have gone bankrupt, so we've kept an amount of cash on our balance sheet for some time that seemed excessively high at the time, at least some board members would say, because, wow, why do we need all that cash? We know we're in a much different situation, we're much healthier. But nevertheless, we kept it enough. And again, as I said earlier, kind of keeping 9/11 as a reference point of what the worst thing that had happened to the industry and how can you withstand some of the pain for a short period of time. Well, again, this situation has been demonstrably and exponentially higher than that. And so we've had to acquire, we've monetized a lot of assets. So I think what's going to happen, at least in our industry, we know that the assets we were able to monetize to get the short-term cash to handle the cash flow needs of the company while we went through this, I think we've learned better and newer ways of how we can monetize those things.
If you're a publicly traded company has a lot more lines of credit than, say, a private company or a small business. And I know a lot of employers thought that they had business interruption insurance until the pandemic hit and they contacted their insurance agent thinking that they were going to tap their business interruption insurance when they found out that there was, what the large print giveth, the small print taketh away, there was business interruption insurance didn't count for pandemics. So that's why I was just curious as far as lessons learned.
No, even knowing people in the industry, the insurance business, I mean, then it's a run in the bank all of a sudden too. So they run out of cash.
Yeah.
I mean, and so it's you can't insure against these things. You have to run a good business. You have to be nimble. I think we were, one of the first things that we did, or at least I was involved in seriously, is going to government, going to the White House and to Congress, and speaking to the point, the question you asked about the training requirements and how do we keep people ready to fly. It's like, listen, if we furlough all these people, which we can shut all this down very quickly to save money and stay alive. But when the economy wants to return, it's going to take a long time to get there, and we will pay the price. And we were effective at selling that mark, and we got some money for the industry to keep people employed while, again, we were going through this, and that's been incredibly helpful. And so there'll be many ways of managing for the risk in the future. People will be creative, but over time, just throwing a big cash balance at that just doesn't seem like the most prudent thing.
I read something that, from what I understand, that when you were CEO, you started and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, the Aviat system, or the Aviat. Aviate. What is that?
Aviate Academy.
Academy.
Yeah, so it's for pilots, right? So there's a shortage of pilots, people say. There isn't a shortage today, but again, if you look at the future with regards to the people retiring and how many people are coming in at the other end, you can see that the pipeline over time will diminish. So how do you go get more pilots? Well, right now they fly in smaller airlines and they move up, they come from the military. The military has downsized significantly. So all the traditional sort of pipelines into the pilot world were diminishing, which created this stance. So what our team did at United was like, hey, why don't we create our own school? We get people early on, literally train them from high school age that this is an option for them, and then begin to get them early on stage. And so in essence, if you sign up with the Aviate program, you're not a United employee per se, but you're in the United pipeline. Mm-hmm. And we will take you and put you down all the various training regimens. We'll put you with the smaller airlines to get your flying in and eventually graduate you to the mothership. And increasingly, again, in the world that we all live in and the concept of income equality, these pilot jobs are amazing jobs. They pay really well, they're quite flexible, and it's a great skill to have. And it's a skill and a job that a lot of people, especially in the inner city, don't ever see as a possibility. So we've added the wrinkle in this world of ESG and importantly DEI, that we're going to find and fund and help. 50% of these classes will be with underrepresented minorities. And we have funded it through partners. We're going to give scholarships. So, you can be a pilot. Well, no, I can't afford it. Well, we can take care of that. No, I'm black or brown or no, that doesn't matter. We're going to come find you and make sure that we give you the opportunity. The qualifications and the regulations and the passing of tests to become an official pilot is governed by the federal government. It is not governed by you. We train you, but you have to go pass the test. And the fact that someone's going to be a woman or someone that's going to be black or brown or that they're going to be inherently unsafe is just screams at the top of the head how biased our nation can be sometimes. No, these pilots will be fully trained, fully capable, and the fact that a good portion of them will come from underrepresented minorities, it's what we want in this country. Now, people forget that income inequality, if you look back at history, can create serious issues for any country, certainly. And so we're doing our best and where we can to sort of help that matter out. So I'm very proud of that academy and what we're doing in that space.
I guess to use a baseball analogy, you put them in the minor leagues at first, get them trained well before they go to the big show of the major leagues, right? That's
a great analog. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they become ours, and more importantly, we train them back to the culture conversation. A United pilot has a certain approach and certain things that we do and how we approach our marketplace. And I'm sure all the other airlines do, but it's not ours. And ours is caring for you as a customer. the speeches I make to them as they graduate are about that very nature of things. How do you treat, the customers that you're in charge of, like you're literally in charge of their life? And so how do we make sure we make you feel special when you fly with us?
And it also builds employer loyalty too, because you started off with a particular company, so when you're moving on up, nothing like employer morale and employee morale and employer loyalty as well too.
A host of other things, right?
So, we're doing it.
But and importantly, again, there's a business angle to it. We are replenishing the pipeline of resources we need to fly you and the aircraft. Now, people say, well, you won't need pilots after some time. That's a ways away.
I'm out of time, but I really would hope you come back. I had a lot of fun doing it.
Happy to help any point in time. Thank you, Andre. Very good. Thank you.
We're so happy to have Oscar MUNOZ. Oscar MUNOZ, former CEO and chairman of United Airlines. Well, if you've got a question about finance or a comment about the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can always write us, and we'd love to hear from you. You can write us at andre@wallstreetwrapup.info. Keep it pithy or concise. We'll be glad to answer your questions. And now for a look ahead for next week. But first, on this day, November the 5th, today, back in 1999, what public company was found by a federal court to be a monopoly and ordered to be broken up? We'll have that answer in just a moment. Well, on this day, November the 5th, 1999, what public company was found by a federal court to be a monopoly and ordered to be broken up? It was Microsoft. But before the Department of Justice could break it up, Microsoft won on appeal. Nothing like a close call. Well, next week, we'll be talking about China and their quest to become the lone superpower over the United States. My guest will be Jonathan Ward. Now, Jonathan has consulted for the Department of Defense and many Fortune 500 companies, and due to his expertise on China's goal of dominance. Plus, he's written a great book on the subject. It's called China's Vision of Victory. Last week, China launched a super hypersonic missile that circled the globe twice before landing. Now, this caught our intelligence agencies completely by surprise. It'll be a fascinating talk. Want you to be there. That's next week with Jonathan Ward on China. And also coming up this month, we'll be talking with the former CEO and chairman of Toys R Us and Saks Fifth Avenue, Gerald Storch, about retail problems, empty shelves, supply disruptions, and are the malls dying due to online shopping? And by the way, Jerry was also the vice chairman of Target Stores. The man knows retail. And Jerry will be with us on Wall Street Wrap-Up in just a couple of weeks. And as a reminder, we repeat the show on Sunday mornings, but always the best way is to set your DVR so you'll never miss an episode. And that's our show for Friday, November the 5th, 2021. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for joining us this evening. And as always, we appreciate you for allowing us into your homes tonight. Remember, you can always follow us on all the social media, Facebook, or whatever they may call it now, YouTube, Twitter, and WYES.org. May you have a fun weekend and a productive week ahead. I'll see you next week. For Wall Street Wrap-Up, I'm Andre Laborde. And remember, money never sleeps. Good night.
Sponsored by New Orleans Distillers, creators of fine spirits and liqueurs. Through dedication to science, art, and passion, blends of tradition and flavor emerge. For you, always locally crafted. New Orleans Distillers, classically Southern.